Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I'm Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about the Netflix original, The Perfection.
Before we get into what we are going to be talking about today, we just wanted to remind you all to review us and subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on. Be sure to give us that 5-star review and let us know how you feel about us. Mm-hmm. So, today we are going to be talking about The Cult of Perfection.
And then we'll go ahead and move on to how help doesn't always come the way that we want it.
Then we'll give you the saints of the movie.
And then finally, of course, we'll give you where you can go ahead and reach out.
So, spoiler alert for the movie, if you have not yet caught it on Netflix. It's been out since May, so it's been a while, but it's a good one to watch during your horror month scary movie marathon if you do one in October.
It actually came out in 2018.
Oh, May of 2018.
Yes.
Okay, so It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Over a year.
It's probably that movie that you've seen in your queue and you're like, I'll just skip over it. But really, I think it's, if you are like us and it's the spooky time of year and you want to watch a spooky movie, why not give this one a try?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So let's jump into our review and summary of the film because, obviously some people have not yet seen it and probably in their queue waiting for it. And we already told them that it's going to be a spoiler review here. So, all right, let's see. Summary. Oh, it's hard to summarize this movie without giving away some of the twists.
Well, we've already given them a spoiler, so it's okay.
A woman who once trained at a prestigious music academy returns to their embrace after her mother passes away. Though the reasons for her returning are not what they appear to be at first, and a revenge plot ensues.
That's actually pretty good. Yeah, I usually make fun of your stuff, but you know what? Bravo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I'm probably going to mess mine up. Would you say
it was The Perfection?
It was close to it.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so my summary. Now, I'm trying to think of maybe other things that might be beneficial. So, two prestigious cello players come together to pick a new student to go to the same academy that they went to growing up. They get close. One turns on the other, but does she really? Maybe not. You don't know. And then maybe they do come together and they are together and then they kill everybody.
Okay.
Right? That pretty much sums it up.
Well, except for Anton. They didn't exactly kill him.
No, well, I mean, he's pretty... What does he have left to live for?
Well, we can call him Bob in the middle of a river, or we can put him in a pile of leaves and call him Russell.
Oh my gosh.
Put him in a hole and call him Doug.
What are you talking? Why are you making these jokes?
Because he has no arms and no legs.
So?
Okay.
I don't get it, but that's okay. Continue on. Maybe somebody out there will enjoy that.
So, I didn't know what to expect from this when we first watched it. It really was... I honestly thought it was just going to be one of those bad Netflix movies that we watched last year. Was it last year that we watched a couple of those bad Netflix movies? Like How It Ends?
Oh, yeah.
And it really wasn't. It was really good. It was one of those things that I was like, wow, this is kind of really keeping me on here. This is something that I do want to talk about. And unfortunately, so many other things came up while we were kind of
living life.
And we didn't get around to it. And it just happened to be in our horror month. And we were like, hey, we can finally talk about The Perfection.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to talk, especially about what I'm going to talk about here in just a second, is, I really wanted to talk about this movie in particular because of how it made me feel about my own life. So, yeah, I will give it a thumbs up. It was good.
All right. So when I see trailers for horror movies, it's either, oh my gosh, I want to see that, like really, really bad, or it's, oh my gosh, I wish I never even saw the trailer. So it's like one of those, one or the other. And this one, like I kept on hearing good reviews about it, but I also kind of heard some, not necessarily negative reviews, but just reviews from people who weren't fans of the genre that this kind of took inspiration from.
Who maybe probably never got past the whole bus
Exactly. Yep.
section.
They thought that and really somebody had said that this movie could be cut into 3 movies, which it really could. It really could be cut into 3 movies. But I think most people were expecting the first third of the movie to be actually what the movie was about.
Yeah.
And it was a lot more than that, which I actually liked because I like a nice, juicy plot.
Yeah.
And then I eat it and chase it down with a nice glass of wine.
Okay. The perfection is definitely not everybody's cup of tea. And this is something that it's really more of the psychological thriller rather than straight up gore horror.
Even though there is some gore.
There is some gore. It's not explicit. I think the sex scene is a little bit more explicit than the gore is in the movie. But I think that it's, in a sense, it's really trying to pull that sexuality back to being more of they're owning their own sexuality rather than somebody else owning it.
I disagree. I think that the sex scene was gratuitous and it didn't need to be there. I think if they could have just been like really good friends and had a connection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to make it a sexual thing.
Yeah, and it's more redeemed after the entire movie rather than in the moment.
I still disagree, but
Okay.
I'm more of a, I don't know, just me being the feminist that I am. Whenever I think of like sex scenes, I'm thinking of who is this really serving? Is this really serving to further the plot, or is it just there to, make the male audience happy? And I really think that you could have taken out the sex scene and it would have had the same plot.
The director's actually kind of known for his love stories. Well, within his movies. His movies are more or less kind of this tongue-in-cheek horror that he does. And this is something that I think really, yes and no. I think, yes, it does kind of provide for the plot, but it also doesn't.
I'm glad that you were able to concede just a little bit toward my side.
Well, no, I thought it was gratuitous as well, but I think that it is, in a sense, adding to the end theme rather than taking away from it.
Okay.
But overall, the narrative could have been benefited without it in there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, moving on to what we're going to be talking about. The Cult of Perfection. So, I know that one of the interviews was talking with not just the director, but with one of the actors, and the director also talked about how this desire to belong can kind of keep people in this unhealthy kind of toxic environment. This is something that you kind of see a little bit in where the audience is coming from for each of the stories with each of the chapters. In the very beginning with Charlotte, you have that idea that, she's kind of, she lost her mom. She's a little down on her luck now. She's got nothing else to go for. Like her family doesn't even notice her at the funeral. And Anton is, her break. So she's going to be going back with them and doing this whole big thing. And that's, you kind of see this as, okay, she wants to be a part of this group until you find out more about them. And then, her lies begin to unravel a little bit when she's in that in the section with Lizzie, when she's trying to get to when her and Lizzie are kind of together, you see this kind of weird kind of revenge against Lizzie almost in a way, taking her spot. But then you realize that it's not after in the next section. And then you have Lizzie who's coming back after that whole thing, after getting her hand chopped off. And you feel like, okay, she's back there, but is this really good for her? The entire time you're thinking that, why is she there? And, she wants so much for their approval, but she's not going to get it. You could tell that they're like, oh, you're dead to me now.
Yeah, like there's no point in you being here.
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Exactly. And then you go into the final chapter and you're like, why is anybody there? This is kind of this thing that, really seeing this desire for acceptance within the crowd, that we all kind of do this thing, that we want to be a part of something bigger than us. So we kind of overlook what other people are doing. Now, Netflix has this other series called Explained on there. There is The Mind Explained, and then they also have Just Explained. 2 weeks ago, they had one on cults. And one of the experiments that they talked about a little bit was this experiment where people just kind of go along with the crowd, fearing peer pressure, fearing, reprisal from the rest of the crowd. Yet they don't speak up when an answer is wrong.
Are you talking about the number? What was it? A number experiment?
Well, it was sort of
how long?
How long the line is?
Yeah. So there's like a table of people, and there's 3 lines, and it was ABC, labeled ABC.
Yes.
One of them was obviously longer than the other ones, and everybody but one person at the table was in on the experiment, and they were supposed to say the wrong answer. And then the participant, like the one that didn't know what the actual experiment was, would go along with everybody else.
Yeah.
Even though it was very clear that wasn't the answer. And the example that they had, the person even kind of had this look on his face like, is that? Like, okay, I guess I'll say this. Because, we don't want to look dumb.
Yeah.
And it's hard to speak up when everybody else is saying something and you don't believe it.
Has there ever been a group that you were a part of that you really felt like you kind of glossed over some of your, maybe even some of parts of yourself to really fit in with that group?
Well, I would say it's not really one particular group, but almost, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, like every single theater production has its own aura, I guess. I don't know what else to say. But there's the mood definitely is very specific to whatever play.
Yeah.
And it can even be the same people, but the play itself can bring on its own mood, I guess. And so even if, say it was a very, moody type of a show, it was very hard to come in very happy and, peppy about something because the tone just was very moody. And so I then would be moody even though I didn't have a reason to be. Would that be a good example?
That's a good example, yeah. For me, it was definitely growing up with being in the evangelical culture, and I think this is very much what I wanted to talk about with this movie, was almost everything that I saw in there kind of related back to this. Even one of the very first shots is a crucifix over the mother's bed, which to me was kind of signaling, oh, this movie is about religion. That religion kind of demands this perfection of you. And really for me, that's what it was. It was demanded perfection of me, and that's what I wanted to be. That I glossed over myself. I was somebody else that really wasn't supposed to be that. Now, granted, the whole sexual abuse and everything that the girl suffered under Anton, and by the way, just Steven Weber without any clothes on was just kind of disturbing.
Why did you have to remind me that was a thing?
almost every horror movie that we have thought about in the last few weeks has had naked old people in it.
Why are there so many naked old people in horror movies?
Why is that a horror trope now?
I don't know. I don't like it, but that's probably why. It's because most people are like, ugh. And, and let's just face it, our American society as a whole has a problem with naked people, especially naked people who aren't sexy.
Yes.
And so, like, we're okay with sexy naked bodies.
Who aren't, I would say, socially sexy, because, sexy can be defined in one's own terms, but I'm saying culturally sexy. That's what I should say.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning.
Yeah. But I'm saying that everyone could define sexy in their own way rather than,
Well, I'm pretty sure you don't have to tell our listeners that. They know that Hollywood has messed up our image of what sexy is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I know. Speaking of Anton, this is one of his forms of control as the cult leader for the perfection. I would say, I don't remember what his school was called, but it's...
Fancy Pantsy Music School.
Fancy Pantsy Music School.
Mm-hmm, yep.
The School for Perfection of the cello. And this is really, it was a form of control because it was something that everybody does appreciate. And this is something that, I think a lot of cult leaders do is they take things that people do appreciate and they, branch off from other religions. They branch off from Christianity a lot. They branch off from Buddhism, from Hinduism, from all kinds of different religions to kind of bring in something, that they think is the way to really develop one's sense of the world.
Well, and also, too, another, going back to the parroting with cults, is one aspect of, I've been listening to a lot of cult podcasts, just letting everybody know. So one of the things that Anton does that also a lot of real life cult leaders do is he separates the person from the family. And the one thing that they're focused on is like what they eat, breathe, and sleep.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Anton is doing. He's taking the kids away from their parental figures, and they are just day in and day out. It's cello, cello, cello.
Oh, and they wanted to seek the approval of the cult leader. That everybody was, and he was using sex as a form of punishment for these girls when they messed up. Not sex. He was using rape as a form of yeah. Well, yes, sexual abuse. That's what I meant to say. Sorry.
That's okay.
As a form of punishment for these girls when they mess up, and so that they would have this negative association. And so that's, kind of going back to why I was saying that at the very end, you finally realize that it was more fitting into that narrative of them reclaiming themselves in their own sexuality for the sex scene. But it was gratuitous. It didn't need to be in there, narrative-wise. And you kind of saw this in Lizzie's desire to stay. Well, not only her, wanting to kind of go off and do her own thing, but yeah, she's going to go back to Anton, even though she knows that Anton's kind of a jerk. And they had that conversation when they were by themselves, and you saw that. Charlotte was kind of doing some reprogramming with Lizzie, but was very unsuccessful. And that's why I think she did her whole weird, Inception bugs sickness plot, chopping off the hand. Mm-hmm. And
drugs are powerful, people. You gotta be aware.
So, this is saw that Lizzie's desire to stay was much more than, that desire for one's own self-preservation, wellness, self-preservation.
Which is funny because she probably thought the reason why she should stay with him was because that was her way to achieve wellness.
Exactly.
Which is not the case. But that's, again, in a lot of cult, like, identity, that's something that a lot of their followers tend to do. Like, if somebody leaves a cult, there's a pretty high recidivism rate of going back Because
or going into a different cult.
Yep, because they're just programmed to think that the outside world just isn't good for one reason or another. So,
like Creed from The Office. He's been both a follower and a leader of several cults.
Oh, Creed. Wherever he is now.
So this kind of begs the question of most cults, and specifically in this one, is the perfection something that is achievable? Like for us as human beings, is it achievable for us to be perfect in something?
Well, first of all, as an artist, I've always been taught that as soon as you think that you are perfect, as soon as you think that you have achieved the highest standard that you can achieve, then you're failing yourself. So in a sense, no, it can't be achieved because as we're always evolving, evolving art, we're always in music. Heck, the cello has seen like a huge shift in terms of people playing it in different types of ways that they're playing it. So, yeah, that's my answer. No.
All right. There are, well, the two cello guys on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I don't believe that it is attainable. I do believe that the desire for perfection from society is there, and it often drives us to do some of these crazy things. You know, it's one of these things that I really wanted to talk about, especially with some of the blog posts that I did at the beginning of this year, especially about finding myself after kind of losing a lot of what made me other people, what made different Miguels that were not really me, that I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be perfect for the world. And in a sense, I lost my ability to be a good husband, a good father, to be here, to be present in the moment, that I wanted to be perfect for everything and everybody else. And I think this is very much true about Lizzie and Charlotte's characters, is that Charlotte came to the realization first, and I think it's probably when her mother died, but also for Lizzie when, you know, that scene where she goes after Charlotte and kind of tries to beat her up or whatever.
Mm-hmm. With her nub.
So, yeah.
All right, and we can very clearly see that, well, at the end, we know that Charlotte was actually trying to help Lizzie this whole entire time and ultimately help the rest of the girls at the school too. And I'm just broadly saying girls because I don't see any male students, so I'm just assuming that it's an all-female academy, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I did not look it up. But help doesn't always come the way that we want it. I know that just kind of, well, heck, growing up, we have those times when our parents are trying to give us advice and trying to give us help, and us being stubborn teens are like, you don't know what you're talking about, and I don't need your help. You know, did you like my teen voice?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought you would. And ultimately, we do know that Charlotte's intentions were good. You know, she really did care for the other students, and she really did feel like she needed to do something in order to stop this from happening to other people. I don't think she realized that it was happening to other students until she saw Lizzie's tattoo, because you get that tattoo when you've achieved the perfection.
Yeah, the being able to play in the room.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that she... All right, so we know her intentions were good. And obviously her execution of the things she was trying to do, not so much. I would say that the things that she did were not very good at all. I mean, heck, she poisoned somebody. She manipulated somebody. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean... That's the biggest points. Also, she kind of, ended up killing people at the end, Yes. And what her and Lizzie did to Anton too at the end, interesting and very scary and shocking. But I wouldn't necessarily say that that was good, or that the execution of that was good either. So can you describe a time when your intentions were good, just like Charlotte, but the execution of those intentions weren't the greatest?
Well, really kind of pulling on just those times when I try to do something nice for you and it doesn't turn out well. There's a lot of times when I do something and it's, I intend it to be romantic, or I intend it to be, fun and coupley, but it just turns out to be, that was not the way that I intended to be.
Do you have an example?
I don't have the most recent example, because most of the time I'm like, okay, well, that mental note, I won't do that again in the future. So,
all right. Well, I can't really think of any bad things at the moment, so it couldn't have been that bad, because it's not like something I think about.
Well, most recently it was probably, oh, you know what? She really likes scary movies. We can watch a scary movie after our date night, and it was Hereditary, which, yeah, it was just, it turned out bad in a different way.
Yeah, but it still was fun, though.
It was fun, and it just was disturbing.
Yeah, it was disturbing. For me, let's see. I would say that, well, growing up, I really felt that I needed to be a good big sister and help in any way that I could to make sure that my little sister also had the same wisdom as me. And I know that some of the things that I would do, I don't know if they necessarily were, well, looking back at them now, I would say that they would be considered manipulative, but I didn't know that that's what was happening at the time. Mm-hmm. I just thought that, hey, if I say X, Y, and Z, she's going to be more willing to, do her homework. Or if I say X, Y, and Z, she's not going to skip class. So my intentions were good. My intentions were I was trying to help my little sister, perform better in school. But the fact that I was either fibbing or exaggerating the truth, not so good.
Yeah. All right, I can see that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know it's not a very interesting example. And I'm sure all of us who have siblings have done something similar, but it's the example that I have. Yeah. And then also, too, at the end anyway, Lizzie most likely ended up appreciating what Charlotte did for her, probably minus the arm chopping. But she probably also would have appreciated a different approach, to trying to save her and get her out of that cult cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you describe a time when someone helped you in a way that could have been executed or done either better or in a different way to make it better?
Can I tell about a time where I wanted help and I asked somebody for help and they never followed through?
That doesn't really follow what I asked, but if it's the only thing you can think of, sure, why not?
Well, right now that's kind of the only thing that I can think of, and oftentimes it was that they did try to help. They made suggestions that were not very helpful.
Okay.
And I thinking specifically of my most recent job search, which was before I was hired on in my current job, was I asked people for help. I sent them my resume, and they got me interviews with other churches, which I specifically asked them, no, I want you to take my resume and take a look at it and help me to find a job outside of the church. Mm-hmm. Which, there was part of me that was like, oh, I can continue to be a youth minister. And then there was that big part of me saying, no, I need to get a hold of my life again. I need to, take control of me rather than that.
Rather than living in a fishbowl?
Rather than, being somebody that I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. It's like I got out and they kept wanting to pull me back in.
Well, that could be a good example because they were trying to help you as in they know that your resume consists of a lot of churches.
Yeah.
And they know that moving out into the secular world, it's really hard to market yourself if all you've ever done is church work. So, that could have been their way of trying to help you because they knew that it was going to be easier for you to find a job doing that versus branching out.
A nice big 15-year blip.
It wasn't just a blip. You did get paid for it, and you have a pension. So there you go.
Yes.
You do have something to show for it. For me, so the end did, I guess, get the right type of thing that needed to happen for me, but I didn't really appreciate the way it was gone about. But back in my theater days, there was a particular scene that was very high emotion, and the actor I was playing against, I just couldn't, when there's a term for acting where you're passing the ball back and forth. I felt like I was throwing him the ball, and he just, wasn't even around to catch it and throw it back to me. I kept on trying, and it just wasn't working. Do you want me to explain further what that means? Or
No, I think people understand it. When you don't have that, chemistry with another actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exactly like if you're playing catch by yourself.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels. And so my theater director, sorry, I forgot what a director was called for a second. They're my theater director.
The person who tells us what to do.
Exactly, yeah. He just kept on pushing us, and I was fed up. I was I'm giving it my goddamn all, and this person is not giving me anything. I almost had a prima donna moment. I can't work like this. I'm going to go back to my trailer. That's kind of what it felt like. But he had to stay behind after rehearsals, and I'm I have so much work to do. And finally, I just yelled at this guy. I was not my director, but the guy I was acting with, because we had to take a 5-minute break. And I'm just listen, dude, what the heck? I am giving you everything that I possibly can. I'm worn out. I'm tired. Just get your butt in the game and just help me out a little bit. And, when I get upset, I sometimes get a little scary. And
yes,
I think that he got a little scared of me, but we did finish that scene, and it was exactly the type of emotions that we needed to have. So the outcome was exactly what it needed to be, but I think the fact that my director kept us back kind of made me crabby, that kind of stuff, that wasn't really appreciated.
Yeah.
I think he relied on me getting after the other actor.
Yeah.
To fulfill what we needed to get done.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this happens quite a bit. I mean, I'm sure people have seen movies or TV shows where just two people, they're they don't work together.
Yeah, their chemistry is non-existent, and you're this feels awkward. And yes, sometimes we do need that little extra flair of drama to assist in order to actually, either prove a point about how to help somebody out, or, just trying to give somebody, pushing them into the right direction. But we also have to be kind of careful because you can actually let it become the driving factor, the drama become the driving factor, which is kind of what Charlotte did.
Yeah.
I would say that having somebody chop their arm off is very dramatic.
Yes.
And you also have to be careful about using too much drama to try to help somebody. I'm using air quotes, because it can turn into manipulation, which in a way, Charlotte did manipulate Lizzie, because she put the drugs in her system and used that to manipulate her mind. And I feel like manipulating somebody into doing what you want them to do, or manipulating a situation into trying to make it easier on you, is not the best thing to do. Mm-hmm. You will lose friends.
And not influence people.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So, should we move on to the patron saints?
Sure, this is a very difficult one, and I think that most horror movies or most thriller movies, they're definitely going to be difficult to find anybody that kind of achieves that good status.
Well, especially with a small cast.
Yes. So in that instance, I'm going to go with the cello as my saint, primarily because I like the cello. And I think it's a beautiful instrument. I always, there's always something about it that, when I hear cello played well, it's like, oh, that's fantastic.
It's a very dynamic instrument. Like, you can use it for a lot of things.
Not only that, I also really enjoyed the cello playing parts. It's, it commanded the stage every time it was on it.
Yep.
So I'm going with the cello as Saint Cello.
Saint Cello, the cello.
Yes, the cello.
The saint of cellos.
The saint of cellos.
I'm going to pick a character that was like very briefly in the movie, but she was really the only person I could pinpoint to choose, and that would be Charlotte's mom. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something a little bit controversial, but I think that her getting sick and like really getting bad sick, on her deathbed, actually was a blessing in disguise, because it got Charlotte out of that situation and she could actually think on her own and think back about what happened to her at that school and realize that it was not good and it was not healthy. So thanks to Charlotte's mom for being sick.
Well, and it kind of reminds me again of that explained episode on cults. Was that some of the cult survivors were talking about how, they went home for a funeral and they realized, I need to get out. And so, that can be a catalyst for change.
And unfortunately, by listening to my podcast about cults, there's also a lot of accounts of people who are cult survivors who still side with the cult leaders or still defending the cult leaders in one way, shape, or form. Like, they will say, well, them killing all those people wasn't the best idea, but that they had two parts. There was the nice cult leader, and then there was the murderous cult leader.
No, they're the same person.
But anyway, so it's really hard to break away from that, and the fact that Charlotte was able to, I think she realized that there's more important things, like her family was more important.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So we're not the cult leader, so we're not going to force you to listen or subscribe or review our podcast, but we would really like it if you would do so.
Yes.
So please give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer to listen to your podcasts on.
And if you want to get a hold of us directly, you can always contact us at Patron Saints of Pulp Culture on Facebook, and then also on Instagram, same handle at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. And then you can also find us at our website at you say it.
www.patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
I don't know why I always get so panicky whenever it comes to that. I need to have it written down before I say it.
Yeah, the patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Anyway.
So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.